The January wind bit through Nia Parker's thin coat as she hurried across the street toward Bellissimo, the high-end Italian restaurant that glittered like money on every corner of Manhattan's Upper East Side. Her fingers were numb, her curls frizzed from the cold, and she was 10 minutes late. Not great for someone still on probation. She slipped through the back door, past the hiss of steam and clatter of plates, and tied her black apron as Marco, the floor manager, appeared like an approaching storm. "Nia, where have you been?" The train got stuck between stops again," she said, already grabbing her notepad. "Save it." Marco's usual calm was gone. "Table 7, private room. You're serving them tonight." She stopped short. "That's Jessica's section." "Jessica called in sick," he said, lowering his voice. "And this table?" "They're not regulars. They're important. You do not mess this up. You're polite, quick, and invisible," Nia finished for him with a tired smile. He blinked, surprised. Exactly. Invisible had become her specialty lately. 6 months ago, she'd left Atlanta behind. The sweet tea, the porch light evenings, and a relationship that had ended with bruises she still hid under long sleeves. New York was supposed to be her fresh start, but fresh starts cost money. Rent, bills, survival. And Bellissimo was her lifeline. "Who are they?" she asked quietly. Marco hesitated, then leaned closer. "Business associates of Mr. Ricci." Her brows lifted. "The Mr. Ricci?" He nodded once, eyes flicking nervously toward the hallway that led to the private suites. Everyone at Bellissimo knew that name. Dante Ricci. The elusive owner whose rare visits made the kitchen whisper and the waitstaff walk on air. Some said he was just a billionaire investor. Others whispered darker things, about old family ties, old debts, and a kind of power that never needed to shout. Marco handed her a tray. "Do your job, Nia, and for the love of God, don't draw attention to yourself." She took a breath, straightened her apron, and stepped out into the dining room. The restaurant glowed like a movie set. Low jazz, warm light, polished silver. Couples laughed softly over wine glasses worth more than her weekly paycheck. Down a narrow hallway, a heavy wooden door waited. Behind it, the air thrummed. Low voices, laughter that didn't sound casual. Nia knocked once. "Enter." The voice was smooth, deep, faintly accented, Italian, wrapped in control. She pushed the door open. The private room was dim, lit by a golden chandelier. 6 men in tailored suits turned to look. Conversation stopped. But one man at the head of the round table didn't just look at her. He studied her. Dante Ricci. Dark hair, precision cut, sharp jaw, faint stubble. A charcoal suit that wasn't just expensive, it looked personal, but it was his eyes that froze her. Steel gray, intelligent, unreadable. He couldn't have been more than 35, but there was something about him that said, this man has never been told no. Nia lowered her gaze. "Good evening, gentlemen. I'm Nia, and I'll be your server tonight. May I start you off with some drinks?" She moved around the table smoothly, pen poised, her southern poise intact even under 6 sets of heavy eyes. When she reached Dante last, he didn't look at the menu. He looked at her. "You're new," he said. His voice was quiet, more statement than question. "Yes, sir," she replied. 3 months. A flicker of something, maybe a smile, crossed his mouth. "Scotch, neat." "Right away." She turned, stepped out, and exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for minutes. She placed the order, waited for the bartender to pour, and tried to shake off the feeling that Dante Ricci's eyes had followed her out. By the time she came back with the drinks, the mood in the room had shifted. Voices low, serious, papers spread across the table, the kind of conversation people didn't want overheard. She moved quietly, refilling glasses, collecting plates, doing what she did best, blending in. Then, as she set down the last glass, her phone vibrated in her apron pocket. Her stomach dropped. She'd left it on silent. But that vibration, once, twice, felt loud enough to echo. She glanced at the screen. Her grandmother's nurse. Her breath caught. She'd been expecting this call, dreading it. Nia took a step back from the table, angled herself toward the door, and whispered into the phone, "Pronto?" The Italian slipped from her mouth like a second heartbeat. Soft, effortless, perfect. The nurse's voice came through gentle and hesitant, her words breaking the air like glass. Nia closed her eyes. No. Dio mio. Her hand trembled. When she hung up, her throat was tight, her chest hollow. But when she looked up, the room had gone silent. 6 men stared at her, and Dante Ricci's eyes, sharp and cold before, were now something else. Focused, alert, curious. Her stomach flipped. She realized she'd spoken fluent Italian in front of the most powerful man in the room. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "That was my grandmother's nurse. It won't happen again." Dante's gaze lingered, unreadable. Then softly, "Understood." She finished the service in silence, her pulse still unsteady. Every time she re-entered that room, she could feel his eyes on her, steady, dissecting, measuring something he hadn't seen before. By the time dessert was cleared, her nerves were shot. When she presented the check, he didn't even look at it. Just slid a sleek black card across the table. When she returned with the receipt, he signed it, elegant, fluid, and handed it back to her. His fingers brushed hers, warm, deliberate. "Grazie, Nia," he said, her name rolling off his tongue like silk, his accent perfect. She blinked. "You speak Italian?" The faintest smile ghosted across his lips. "I understand enough." And then he stood, buttoned his jacket, and left. Just like that. The room felt colder once he was gone. Nia gathered plates, cleaned the table, and only then noticed the tip. It was enough to cover her rent, twice. She stared at the cash in her hand, unsure if she should feel grateful or hunted. Something told her it wasn't generosity. It was a message. And as she stood there in that quiet golden room, heart still unsteady, a single thought whispered through her mind like a warning she couldn't quite ignore. Why did the most dangerous man in New York look at me like he already knew my secrets? And let me ask you something. If it were you standing in her shoes, would you have walked away? Or would you have stayed, just to see what he'd do next? Hey, before we continue, if you're feeling the story so far, please tap that subscribe button, drop a like, and share this with someone who loves deep stories too. And let me know where you're watching from in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. Now let's return to the moment everything changed. When the last guest left and the restaurant lights dimmed, Nia Parker stood alone in the echoing quiet of Bellissimo's dining room. She'd just finished wiping down the last table, but her hands were still trembling. Not from exhaustion, but from the kind of tension that sits deep in your bones, the kind that doesn't leave when you clock out. Her mind replayed every second of that dinner, the weight of his stare, the way her name had sounded in his mouth. "Grazie, Nia." She could still hear it, soft, deliberate, as if he'd known how her pulse would react. It made no sense. Dante Ricci was her boss, a man whispered about in the kind of tones reserved for either saints or criminals. And she was nobody. Just a waitress trying to rebuild a life that had cracked in too many places. She looked down at the tip he'd left, a wad of bills folded neatly in her palm. It was too much, way too much. And yet, she couldn't bring herself to turn it down, because tomorrow, that money would buy her plane ticket to Atlanta, to see her grandmother one last time. Nia slipped the cash into her bag and headed to the back room to clock out. But before she could hang up her apron, Marco appeared again, his usual brisk tone replaced with something cautious. "Mr. Ricci wants to see you," he said quietly. She froze. "Right now?" He nodded. "He's in the office, said it won't take long." Her heart gave a slow, uneven beat. "Did he say why?" Marco's eyes darted away. "No, just don't keep him waiting." Nia's throat went dry. She'd heard stories about people being called in by Dante Ricci. Some said he had a way of asking questions that felt like confessions. Others said he didn't ask questions at all. He simply knew. Still, she forced a calm she didn't feel and followed Marco down the narrow hallway. The door to the owner's office was half closed, a strip of golden light cutting across the floor. Marco gave it a quick knock. "Send her in," came the voice from inside, low, smooth, commanding. Nia stepped through. The room was nothing like she expected. No flashy gold, no arrogance, just quiet wealth, dark wood, shelves lined with books, a soft amber glow from a desk lamp. And behind that desk sat Dante Ricci, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. He looked up as she entered, his gray eyes sharp even under the warm light. "Sit, please," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. Nia hesitated, then obeyed, clutching her bag like a shield. He studied her for a moment, not like a man looking at a woman, but like one trying to solve a puzzle. "You speak Italian," he said finally. Nia's pulse jumped. "My grandmother's Italian. She raised me after my mom passed. It just stuck." "From Florence?" She blinked. "How'd you know that?" One corner of his mouth curved slightly. "Your accent. It's Tuscan. Soft, rounded vowels. Beautiful." The word hung between them like smoke. Nia shifted in her seat. "Was there something you needed, Mr. Ricci?" He leaned back, his expression unreadable. "I heard the call you took tonight. I assume it was bad news." Her throat tightened. "My grandmother's not doing well. The nurse said I should come if I want to say goodbye." Silence filled the room, heavy, but not cold. Dante's gaze softened just slightly. "I'm sorry." The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. She hadn't expected empathy, not from him. "Thank you," she murmured. He watched her for another moment, then reached into the drawer and slid a small black folder across the desk. "Open it." Nia hesitated, then flipped it open. Inside lay a plane ticket. New York to Florence, first class, departure, tomorrow afternoon. Her heart stuttered. I don't understand." "I have business in Italy," he said smoothly. "My translator fell ill. You're fluent, available, and from what I've seen, discreet." "Discreet?" she echoed, unsure if it was a compliment or a warning. He smiled faintly. "You don't gossip. You don't pry. You see everything and say nothing. That's rare." She shook her head slowly. "Mr. Ricci, I'm just a waitress. You could hire—" "I already have," he cut in, his tone quiet but final. "You're coming with me." Nia blinked. "I don't even have a passport." "You do," he said. "It was renewed last year when you visited your grandmother, correct?" Her breath caught. "How do you—" "I make it my business to know who works for me." She sat frozen, unsure if she should feel flattered or terrified. "Mr. Ricci, I appreciate the offer, but I can't just leave my job without notice." He leaned forward slightly, his eyes catching the lamplight. "Your position will be waiting for you when you return. 2 weeks. You'll be compensated generously." Her voice came out small. "Why me?" He held her gaze for a long moment. "Because I trust you more than the people I should." Something about the way he said it, low, deliberate, made her chest tighten. Still, every instinct screamed no. This wasn't normal. This was power disguised as kindness. "I'll think about it," she said, standing slowly. "Of course." His tone was calm, but his eyes, those eyes, told a different story. "The car will pick you up at noon tomorrow. If you decide not to come, I'll understand." He paused, then added softly, "But your grandmother doesn't have much time, does she?" Her breath caught. It wasn't a threat. It was worse. A truth used like one. Nia left the office in a daze, her heart pounding against her ribs. By the time she stepped out into the cold night, her thoughts were a storm. How had he known about her passport? Her grandmother? The call? The city buzzed around her, cabs honking, neon lights flickering, but all she could hear was his voice echoing in her mind. "You're coming with me." In her apartment later, Nia sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the ticket in her hand. The envelope had her name printed in gold. The destination, Florence, Italy. Part of her wanted to rip it up, to run. The other part, the part that ached for her grandmother's fading voice, couldn't. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she whispered, "Grandma, what do I do?" There was no answer, just the hum of the radiator and the faint sirens in the distance. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "The car will be outside at noon. Don't be late. DR." She stared at the screen for a long moment, then whispered the question that would define everything that came next. What kind of man makes an offer you can't refuse, and calls it kindness? And if you were her, would you go? Would you take that flight for the chance to say goodbye? even if it meant stepping straight into the hands of the most dangerous man in New York? The next morning came far too soon. Nia Parker barely slept. She'd packed, unpacked, and repacked the same small suitcase 3 times, pacing her apartment like someone trying to reason with fate. Every time she almost convinced herself not to go, her mind went back to her grandmother's frail voice on the phone. "Come soon, Mia Cara. I want to see you smile again." That was all it took. By noon, Nia stood outside her building, suitcase in hand, watching as a sleek black Mercedes pulled up to the curb. The tinted window rolled down. The driver, a man in a dark suit, expression unreadable, stepped out and nodded. "Ms. Parker?" "Yes. Mr. Ricci asked me to escort you." She hesitated for half a second before sliding into the back seat. The door shut with a sound that felt far too final. As the car glided through Manhattan's midday traffic, Nia watched the skyline blur past, the city she'd barely learned already fading behind her. Her pulse wouldn't slow. Who just accepted a plane ticket from a man like Dante Ricci, a man whose smile could silence a room and whose name made grown men look away? She told herself she was doing this for her grandmother, not for him, but part of her wondered if that was still true. When the car pulled into a private hangar at the airport, Nia's mouth went dry. The jet waiting on the tarmac gleamed like a promise too good to be real. Inside, everything smelled like leather and espresso. A flight attendant in black smiled politely. "Mr. Ricci is already on board." Of course he was. Nia followed the attendant up the narrow steps, clutching her purse like armor, and there he was, seated near the window, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, reading a newspaper like he had all the time in the world. He looked up as she entered. "Right on time." She tried to sound calm. "I figured it would be rude to keep your jet waiting." That hint of a smile returned. Rude and unwise. She couldn't tell if he was joking. As the plane took off, Nia sat stiffly across from him, pretending to read a magazine she couldn't focus on. The city shrank below them, and with it, everything that had felt safe. After a long silence, Dante folded his newspaper, set it aside, and studied her. "You don't trust me." Her eyes flicked up. "Should I?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached for the glass of scotch beside him, swirling the amber liquid thoughtfully. "Trust is a dangerous word, Ms. Parker. Most people who offer it freely don't live long enough to regret it." Nia gave a humorless laugh. "That's comforting." "I'm not here to comfort you," he said evenly. "I'm here to show you something." "And what's that?" "That not everything you've heard about me is true." The way he said it, soft, careful, made her want to believe him. But she'd learned the hard way that charm often came with chains. They flew in silence for a while. The clouds stretched endless and white beyond the windows, the hum of the engines filling the space between them. Eventually, Dante spoke again. "Tell me about your grandmother." Nia blinked. "Why?" "Because you care about her enough to get on a plane with a man you don't trust." The words landed too close to home. She sighed. "Her name's Lucia. She raised me after my mom died. She's strong, kind. She used to own a bakery in Florence." He listened quietly, no judgment, no interruption, which somehow felt more disarming than his silence. "She taught me Italian," Nia continued softly. "Said a language can be a bridge or a weapon, depending on how you use it." Dante's gaze lingered on her face. "Wise woman." "Yeah," Nia said, a faint smile touching her lips. "The best." He didn't reply. But something in his expression shifted, the kind of softness that doesn't belong to a man who gets described in whispers. Hours later, the jet touched down in Florence. The sunlight was different there. Warmer, older, almost gold. The moment Nia stepped off the plane, the scent of olive trees and espresso hit her, and her chest tightened with homesickness she hadn't realized she still carried. Waiting by the car, a man in a gray suit greeted Dante in rapid Italian. His voice was low, urgent. Dante's jaw tightened slightly before he nodded. Then he turned to Nia. "There's been a change of plans. I have to stop by the villa before you visit your grandmother. It won't take long." She frowned. "Villa?" "My family estate." Of course he had one of those. As they drove through the Tuscan countryside, Nia stared out the window, trying to ignore the growing knot in her stomach. The scenery was beautiful: rolling hills, vineyards, sunlight spilling over ancient stone walls. But beauty didn't cancel danger. The villa appeared suddenly, rising from the hills like something out of another century. Sprawling, elegant, terrifying in its silence. As they entered the gates, guards in black suits nodded them through. Nia's voice came out low. "That's a lot of security." Dante didn't look at her. "Old habits, old enemies." She glanced at him, trying to read his face. "You mean Mafia enemies?" His eyes flicked toward her, a flash of warning behind them. "Careful with that word, Ms. Parker. In my world, it can cost more than your job." Her pulse skipped. "Then what is your world?" He smiled faintly. "The one you just stepped into." Inside, the villa was breathtaking. Marble floors, arched ceilings, oil paintings that probably belonged in a museum. But beneath the beauty, there was tension. Quiet footsteps in the hall, whispered voices that stopped when she passed. A woman in her 50s approached and kissed Dante's cheek. She spoke in rapid Italian, eyes flicking curiously toward Nia before disappearing down another hall. Dante gestured toward a long staircase. "Your room is upstairs. You'll find everything you need. Rest. I'll have someone drive you to your grandmother in the morning." Nia nodded, unsure what else to say. "Thank you." She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Nia." She looked back. His gaze held hers, steady, unreadable. "Whatever happens while you're here, don't go anywhere alone. Not yet." Her heart dropped. "Why?" "What's gonna happen?" He didn't answer. Just that same quiet intensity, the kind that said some answers come with consequences. She climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavier than the last. In her room, sunlight poured through tall windows. The view overlooked a vineyard stretching to the horizon. It was beautiful, but something about it felt like a cage with silk curtains. She sat on the bed, staring at her phone, debating whether to call her grandmother's nurse, when she noticed something. A small envelope lay on the nightstand, her name written in elegant script. She opened it. Inside was a single note. "He's not what he seems. Be careful who you translate for. No signature, just that." Her hand trembled. She glanced out the window toward the courtyard below, where Dante Ricci stood on his phone, his expression hard. Controlled, dangerous. And in that moment, she realized two things. First, she wasn't just here because she spoke Italian. Second, someone, somewhere, already wanted her gone. And maybe Dante wasn't her only danger. Would you have taken that flight? Would you have believed his kindness? Or the warning that came after? Because sometimes the most dangerous thing in the room isn't the man everyone fears. It's the truth he's hiding. Morning sunlight spilled through the curtains, painting long golden streaks across Nia Parker's face. For a few seconds, she forgot where she was. The quiet hum of the countryside, the distant chirp of birds, the smell of lavender in the air. Then she remembered the note. "He's not what he seems. Be careful who you translate for." Her fingers brushed against it on the nightstand, and that cold, uneasy feeling returned. She sat up slowly, looking around the elegant guest room, the marble floors, the antique mirror, the neatly folded clothes that definitely weren't hers. Someone had stocked the wardrobe with everything she might need: dresses, shoes, even a silk scarf in her favorite color. That realization made her skin prickle. How could they possibly have known? She took a breath and told herself not to spiral. Not yet. Downstairs, breakfast was already laid out in a sunlit dining room overlooking the vineyards. Espresso, fresh bread, fruit that looked like it belonged in a painting. And sitting at the far end of the long table, reading a document in silence, was Dante Ricci. He looked impossibly composed, as if power itself was a kind of stillness. Nia hesitated at the door. "Good morning." He looked up. Nodded once. "Sleep well?" "I did, thank you," she lied, sitting across from him. He set the papers down, studied her for a moment. "The car will take you to your grandmother in a few hours. But before that, I'd like you to help me with something." Her stomach tightened. "Help you?" He slid a folder across the table. "Some documents need translation. Legal contracts mostly, Italian to English." I'd like you to read them aloud as you go. Nia glanced at the folder. Thick, stamped, the kind of paper that didn't look like legal contracts. She hesitated. Isn't that what lawyers are for? His mouth curved slightly. I don't trust lawyers. Her eyes flicked up. Do you trust me? He didn't answer immediately. You haven't given me a reason not to. It wasn't exactly comfort, but it was permission. Nia took the folder and began to read. Her voice was steady at first, translating invoices, shipping manifests, contracts that seemed ordinary enough. Until she reached one page near the middle. The words were written in careful, coded Italian, phrases that didn't make sense unless you read between the lines. Her breath slowed as she translated softly. 3 shipments received, to be transferred to the Naples port by nightfall. Security detail doubled due to police interference. Her voice faltered. Mr. Ricci, he looked up, his tone calm but sharp. Continue. She swallowed hard and kept going, her eyes flicking between the lines. The more she read, the clearer it became. These weren't restaurant contracts. These were logistics for something far bigger. Something illegal. When she finished, silence filled the room. Dante leaned back in his chair, expression unreadable. You understand what you just read? I think so, she said carefully. You're moving something. Something you don't want found. He smiled faintly. Good. I like how quickly you see things. She set the papers down. You said it was business. It is. This isn't business, Dante. It's complicated, he interrupted, his tone a little too calm. And not your concern. Her heart pounded. You brought me here to translate, not to be blind. His eyes met hers, sharp, dangerous, but strangely steady. If I wanted you blind, I wouldn't have asked you to read. Nia froze. There was something about his words, an honesty buried beneath the threat. Still, she pushed. So what is this, really? Who are you? He stood then, slow and deliberate, walking toward the window. The sunlight outlined his silhouette, his shoulders tense. You think I'm the villain in every whisper you've heard, he said softly. And maybe you're not wrong. But what you just read, it's not drugs or weapons. It's protection. My people. My territory. Protection from what? From those who would destroy what I've built, she frowned. That sounds like something every criminal says right before... He turned sharply, his voice cutting through her sentence like a blade. Do you think this world is clean, Nia? Do you think the powerful stay powerful by following the rules? She stared at him, her pulse wild. I think some people use that excuse to feel better about crossing lines. He stepped closer, not threateningly, but with a gravity that made her breath catch. And what about you? You crossed a line when you got on that plane. Why? The question hit her harder than she expected. Because I had to, she whispered. Because my grandmother, because you wanted to see what I was, he said quietly, finishing for her. Her eyes widened. That's not true, isn't it? The silence between them stretched, charged and fragile. Then, just as suddenly, his expression softened. You'll see your grandmother this afternoon. I've arranged everything. She blinked, caught off guard by the shift. You have? He nodded. She's being moved to a private clinic outside the city. You'll have time. Her voice cracked. Thank you. He gave a faint smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. Don't thank me yet. Before she could ask what he meant, a loud noise shattered the quiet, a door slamming somewhere deeper in the villa. Followed by the murmur of voices, sharp and hurried. Dante turned instantly, the calm vanishing from his face. Within seconds, 2 of his men entered the room, speaking in Italian too quickly for Nia to follow. Dante's jaw tightened. Then he switched to English. You're staying here. Don't open the door for anyone but me. What's happening? Uninvited guests. And then he was gone. The moment the door closed, Nia's heart kicked into overdrive. She stood, looking out the window, and saw them. 2 black SUVs parked outside the gates. Men in dark coats stepping out, hands under their jackets. Her breath caught. Gunmen! The guards at the gate shouted something she couldn't hear. Then the sound of gunfire cracked through the quiet morning. Nia dropped to the floor instinctively, heart hammering. As the chaos outside escalated, shouts, Engines revving, the sharp pop of more gunfire. And somewhere in the noise, she heard Dante's voice. Calm, commanding, terrifyingly controlled. Minutes passed like hours. Then silence. Finally, the door opened. Dante stepped back in, untouched, his tie slightly undone, eyes darker than before. "It's handled," he said simply. Nia stood shakily. "Handled? There were guns, Dante." He looked at her, really looked at her, and something unreadable passed across his face. "This is what my world looks like," he said quietly. "Still sure you want to see the rest?" Her lips parted, but no words came out. Because for the first time she wasn't sure. You ever have that moment when you realize the person you thought was saving you might actually be the storm you were running from? "Tell me, what would you do if the man who just protected your life was also the reason it was in danger in the first place?" The air in the villa was different after the attack. Heavier, quieter, full of things left unsaid. Nia Parker sat in her room by the tall window, staring at the vineyards beyond the gates. The sun was setting over Florence, turning the fields gold and blood red at once. She hadn't seen Dante all afternoon. His men had patched the gates, cleaned the shattered glass, erased the chaos like it had never happened. But Nia had heard it. The gunfire, the orders, the silence that followed. And she couldn't shake the feeling that something about all this wasn't random. Someone had warned her to be careful who she translated for. Now, after what she'd seen, she was starting to understand why. A soft knock broke her thoughts. One of the house staff, a kind older woman with graying hair, stepped inside. "Signorina Parker," she said in a gentle Italian accent. "Mr. Ricci asked that you join him for dinner." Nia hesitated. "Is it safe?" The woman's eyes flicked toward the window. "With him? Always. From him? Sometimes." That answer did not help. Still, curiosity outweighed fear. 10 minutes later, she walked down the long hallway toward the dining room. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears. The table was set for two this time. Candles flickered, wine shimmered dark in the glasses. And there he was, Dante Ricci, perfectly composed, as if the morning's gunfight had been nothing more than a board meeting. He rose when she entered. "You look better." She crossed her arms. "I'm not sure that's true." A faint smile ghosted across his lips. "Sit, please." She did, but not without suspicion. For a moment, silence filled the room, the kind that buzzes with unspoken words. Then Dante poured her wine and said quietly, "You did well this morning." Nia frowned. "Translating or surviving?" "Both." Her jaw tightened. "If that's what you call surviving, I'd hate to see failing." He watched her for a moment, eyes unreadable, then leaned back slightly. "You've been asking questions. About me. Wouldn't you?" He gave a soft chuckle. "Depends on who's asking." "I want to know the truth," she said firmly. "Why am I really here?" He didn't answer at first. He just studied her face, searching, weighing, before saying quietly, "You deserve honesty." Her heart skipped. "Then tell me," she said. He poured himself another glass of wine, his voice calm but edged with something old. "Your grandmother, Lucia Rossi, do you know who she was before she opened that bakery in Florence?" Nia blinked. "She was a chef, a kind woman. Everyone loved her." "She was also an accountant," Dante said softly. "For my family. Decades ago." Her blood went cold. "What?" "She handled ledgers for my father's businesses when I was a boy. She knew everything, every account, every secret. When my father was killed, she disappeared. I thought she was gone forever." Nia shook her head. "No, that can't be true. My grandmother left Italy because she wanted a new life." Dante's gaze didn't waver. "Or because she knew too much." Her pulse thudded in her ears. "You're saying my grandmother worked for the Mafia?" He didn't correct her. He didn't need to. The silence did that for him. Nia stood, her voice shaking. "So this trip, this job, it was never about me, was it? You brought me here because of her." Dante rose too, his tone calm but heavy. "I brought you because you're the only person she'll still speak to." The words hit her like a slap. "What does that mean?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Lucia Rossi has information that could destroy everything I've built. Or save it. She's the only one left who knows where my father's ledgers are. And I need them before someone else does." Nia's breath hitched. So this was all just manipulation. No, he said quickly. I didn't lie to you. I just didn't tell you everything. She gave a bitter laugh. That's not better, Dante. For the first time, his composure cracked. You think I wanted this? To involve you? To drag you into a world I've spent years trying to clean? Then why do it? He exhaled slowly. Because when I heard you speak Italian, her Italian, I realized you were the bridge I'd been missing. Her voice broke. You used me. His jaw tightened. Maybe, but not like you think. Their eyes met, the air thick with something raw and dangerous. Tell me, she whispered. Why me, Dante? Why really? He stepped closer, his voice dropping low. Because when I saw you, I saw her. The same fire, the same heart, and I thought maybe you could help me end what she started. Her chest tightened. End what exactly? He looked down, then back at her. A war. Before she could respond, one of his men burst into the room, speaking rapidly in Italian. Dante's expression shifted instantly. Command replacing confession. He turned to Nia. They found something. Found what? He didn't answer. He just gestured for her to follow. They walked down a narrow hall toward his study, the same one where she'd translated the documents. One of his guards handed him a folder. Dante flipped it open, his expression darkening. Inside was a photograph, an old black and white picture. Nia's breath caught. It was her grandmother, younger, smiling, standing beside a man who looked unmistakably like Dante. She frowned. That can't be you. He looked at the photo. It's my father. Her voice went soft. He looks just like you. Dante's tone hardened. And he trusted all the wrong people. He handed her the photo. This was taken 2 weeks before he was killed. Nia stared at the image, her grandmother's bright smile, the man's arm around her shoulders. The way both looked at the camera like they shared a secret. What are you saying? She whispered. Dante's voice dropped low. I'm saying your grandmother wasn't just my father's accountant. She was his confidant, maybe more. The words sank into her like ice. Her grandmother, the man who raised Dante's empire, a connection buried for decades. I don't believe you, she said weakly. He met her eyes. Then ask her yourself. Her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced down. Unknown number. She answered, hesitantly. Nia? The voice was faint, breathy, but familiar. Her throat closed. Nonna? You shouldn't be there, her grandmother whispered in Italian. You don't know what he's capable of. Nia's heart dropped. Nonna, he says you worked for his family. Don't trust him, Nia. Promise me. The sins of the father never die with the son. And then the line went dead. Nia stared at her phone, hands trembling. Dante's voice broke the silence. What did she say? She looked up, tears in her eyes. She said not to trust you. He nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. Then you'll have to decide who's lying, her or me. The space between them felt impossibly heavy, charged with fear, confusion, and something neither could name. Because even as every instinct screamed at her to run, her heart whispered something far more dangerous. That maybe, just maybe, she didn't want to. What would you do if the man you feared most claimed to be protecting you from the woman who raised you? Who would you believe, blood, or the one who just bled for you? Night had fallen hard over Tuscany. Rain whispered against the tall windows of the villa, soft at first, then steady. The kind of rain that feels personal, like the sky is grieving with you. Nia Parker sat curled on the edge of the couch in her room, staring at the photo of her grandmother and Dante's father. The edges had begun to curl from how many times she'd held it. Her grandmother's warning echoed in her head. The sins of the father never die with the son. She wanted to believe it wasn't true, that Dante was different. But how different could he be when bodies fell so easily around him? She rubbed her temples, exhaustion pressing behind her eyes. The house was too quiet. Even the guards seemed like shadows now. Then, a soft knock. She flinched. Who is it? It's me. Dante's voice came through the door, low, careful. For a moment she considered pretending she wasn't there, but something in his tone, not command, not confidence, just something human, made her rise. She opened the door. Dante stood there without a jacket, shirt sleeves rolled, rain still glistening on his hair. He looked less like a king tonight, and more like a man trying to hold up a collapsing kingdom. "Can we talk?" he asked. Nia crossed her arms. "Talk or justify?" "Maybe both." He stepped inside slowly, glancing at the photo in her hand. "She told you about my father." "She told me to stay away from you," Nia said quietly. He nodded once like he'd expected it. "Lucia was the closest thing I ever had to family after he died. She protected me. And then she vanished. Do you know what that felt like?" Nia met his gaze. "I know what it's like to lose trust." He looked at her for a long moment, then said softly, "I didn't bring you here to hurt you, Nia. I brought you here because the people who killed my father have started moving again. And your grandmother's name just appeared in their ledgers." Her breath caught. "What?" "She's in danger. And if they find her before I do, she'll die?" He didn't answer, but the silence was loud enough. She shook her head, stepping back. "You expect me to believe that? After everything? After bringing me here, lying to me?" "I didn't lie," he said, voice rising. "I protected you. By putting a gunfight outside my window? I had no choice." The words cracked out of him before he could stop them. For a heartbeat, the mask slipped, and she saw the man beneath, tired, desperate, broken. Nia swallowed hard. "You could have told me the truth." He looked away. "The truth has never kept anyone alive in my world." For a long moment, neither spoke. The rain outside thickened, thunder rolling softly over the hills. Finally, Dante stepped closer. "I need to go to Naples. There's someone there who knows where your grandmother is hiding. I want you to stay here, where it's safe." "Safe?" she repeated bitterly. "In your fortress of secrets?" "Nia," his voice softened. "Please, trust me one more time." She wanted to say no. She wanted to tell him he'd already taken too much. But something in his eyes, that quiet fear he didn't let anyone else see, stopped her, so she said nothing. After he left, the silence grew unbearable. Nia paced, tried reading, tried sleeping, until she heard voices downstairs, whispered, urgent. She crept into the hallway, her heart pounding. The sound came from the study. The door was cracked just enough for her to see. 2 of Dante's men stood with a stranger, a man in a black coat she hadn't seen before. His accent was thick, his tone venomous. "Ricci's losing control," the man said. "And that girl, the American, she's his weakness. Use her." Nia's blood ran cold. The stranger slid an envelope onto the desk. "He won't see it coming. By the time he reaches Naples, it'll already be done." One of the guards nodded. "Understood." She didn't wait to hear more. She backed away quietly, then turned and ran. Her mind spun. They were going to betray him. But how could she warn Dante when she didn't even know who to trust anymore? Lightning flashed outside, lighting the halls in white bursts. She reached her room, grabbed her bag, her passport, and the little cash she had. She had to get out. Then her phone buzzed. Unknown number again. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" A woman's voice, calm, accented, came through. "Nia Parker. Listen carefully. I'm calling for your grandmother." Nia's pulse spiked. "Where is she? Is she safe?" "For now, but not for long. You need to meet us at the old railway station in Florence. Midnight." "What about Dante?" The line went quiet for a beat. Then, "If you want your grandmother alive, don't tell him." Click. The call ended. Nia stood frozen, phone still in her hand, thunder rumbling outside like a warning drum. Her mind raced. She could wait for Dante, trust him one more time, or she could follow the only lead she had to her grandmother. Either choice could destroy her. She grabbed her coat, shoved the phone in her pocket, and slipped quietly down the back staircase. The halls were empty. The guards had changed shifts. The rain covered her footsteps as she slipped into the night. By the time she reached the main road, she was soaked through, but she didn't stop. The taxi she'd called through a burner app arrived just as lightning streaked across the horizon. "Stazione di Firenze," she said breathlessly, climbing in. The driver nodded. 20 minutes. 20 minutes to decide if she'd just saved her grandmother or handed herself to the wrong side. The station was nearly deserted when she arrived. Just a few flickering lights, the smell of rain and diesel. She pulled her hood up and scanned the platform. Then, a silhouette stepped out of the shadows. Tall, dark coat. A man. Miss Parker. Her stomach dropped. It wasn't Dante. It was the stranger from the villa, the one who'd called her Dante's weakness. She turned to run, but another figure blocked her path. Relax, the man said smoothly. We only want what Ricci's hiding. Help us, and you and your grandmother walk away free. Her voice shook. I don't know anything. He smiled. Then you're no use to me alive. Before she could scream, a shot rang out, sharp, echoing through the empty station. The man crumpled to the ground. Nia froze, heart racing. Behind her, a familiar voice cut through the rain. Next time you run, Dante said, stepping out of the shadows, gun still smoking. At least tell me where you're going. Her knees almost gave out. You followed me? I told you not to go anywhere alone. She stared at the dead man on the ground, shock and nausea mixing. He said they'd kill my grandmother. Dante's expression hardened. They will, if we don't move first. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the fury in his eyes. You still don't understand, Nia. You're not a pawn in this. You're the reason they came. What are you talking about? He looked at her, rain sliding down his jaw. Because of who you are. She blinked. I'm nobody. He shook his head. No, you're the only living blood tie to the woman who destroyed my father. And the only one who can finish what she started. You ever stand in the middle of a storm and realize it's not just around you? It's because of you? If you were Nia, standing there with rain and blood at your feet, would you still trust the man who just saved your life? Or finally run for good? Rain still poured through the broken roof of the old Florence station. The gunfire's echo faded, leaving only the ragged sound of Nia Parker's breath and the steady click of water on stone. She stared at Dante, the man who'd just shot someone to save her, and every nerve in her body screamed two things at once, run and stay. Her voice came out rough. What do you mean? Because of who I am. Dante's eyes searched hers. You think this started with me? It started with your grandmother, and it ends with you. Lightning flashed again, turning his face into plains of silver and shadow. He holstered the gun. Come on, we can't stay here. Nia wanted to argue, to demand every answer, right there in the rain, but she saw more headlights at the far end of the platform, more men. She grabbed Dante's hand before she could think better of it. Where? Anywhere but here. They ran. The car was waiting in an alley 2 blocks down. Dante slid into the driver's seat, slammed the door, and the tires screamed against the wet pavement. For several minutes, neither spoke. The windshield wipers beat like a heartbeat, fast and relentless. Finally, Nia whispered, You said I'm the reason they came. How? He kept his eyes on the road. They believe your grandmother hid something before she vanished. My father's ledgers. Records of every deal, every betrayal. Whoever holds them controls half of Europe's underground network. And you think I can find them? I don't think. He shot her a look. I know. Her chest tightened. I didn't even know she was involved in any of this. That's exactly why they'll trust you, he said. You're clean. She laughed bitterly. Clean? After tonight? His jaw flexed, but he didn't answer. They left the city, climbing narrow mountain roads that wound through olive groves. The storm thinned to mist. Somewhere along the way, fear gave way to exhaustion. Nia's body shook from cold and adrenaline. Where are we going? She asked finally. A safe house outside Lucca. You can rest there while I find out who ordered that hit. And my grandmother? He hesitated. We'll find her, I promise. You keep promising, she murmured, but every promise feels like another secret. Silence again, until Dante pulled off the main road and stopped beside an old stone chapel half hidden by vines. This is it? He nodded. Go inside. Nia stepped through the door, half expecting guards or weapons, but the small space was empty except for candles flickering before a marble statue. She turned. Why here? Dante followed, the door creaking shut behind him. Because this is where my father married your grandmother's sister. Nia froze. My great-aunt? He nodded once. Your family, Nia. Distant, but blood. That's why they're after you. They think Lucia passed the ledgers through her line. To you. Her breath left her in a single shudder. Everything clicked. Why he'd noticed her accent, why he'd known about her passport, why the enemies wanted her alive. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked. "Because if you'd known," he said softly, "you'd have run before I could protect you." She laughed through tears. "You still think you're protecting me?" "I know I'm failing at it." Something in the honesty of that broke her guard. She looked at him, not as the boss, not as the danger, but as a man who'd lost almost everything trying to keep control of what was left. "Why keep fighting, Dante?" she asked quietly. "You could walk away." He looked up at the stained glass window, where pale dawn light was starting to seep through. "Because if I walk away, everything my father built falls into the hands of men worse than him. And if you walk away, they'll use you to find what she hid. Either way, we lose." Nia stepped closer. "Then maybe we stop letting them set the rules." He turned toward her, surprise flickering across his face. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe it's time I stop running. If those ledgers can end this, I'll find them myself." He shook his head. "No, they'll kill you. Maybe, but I'm done being scared." For a long moment, he just stared at her, the stormlight painting her face in gold and gray. Then he nodded slowly. "You sound like Lucia." "That's what scares me," she said, but she smiled, small, defiant. He reached into his coat and handed her a folded map. "Your grandmother used to visit a villa near the coast, outside Pisa. If she hid anything, it's there." Nia unfolded it. A single mark, an X, near the edge of a cliff. "How do you know?" "Because that's where she said she wanted to be buried." Her throat tightened. "Then we'd better start digging." They drove until morning. The storm had cleared by the time they reached the coast. The sea stretched wide and gray, waves slapping against rocks below an abandoned villa perched on the cliffside. Nia stepped out, wind whipping her coat. "So this is where she kept her secrets." "Or where she buried them," Dante said quietly. Inside, dust coated everything. Furniture draped in white sheets. The smell of salt and thyme. They searched room after room until Nia stopped at a small piano in the corner. Its keys were yellowed, but one, middle C, looked newer. She pressed it. A soft click. The floor panel beneath the piano shifted slightly. Dante knelt, pried it open, and there it was, a small iron box, sealed and rusted. Nia's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside, ledgers wrapped in faded silk, and a letter. She unfolded the paper, her grandmother's handwriting flowing across the page. "My sweet Nia, if you are reading this, then the past has finally found you. These books hold truth and blood in equal measure. Use them not for power, but for peace. The man who seeks them will either destroy what's left or save it. You will know which by the way he looks at you when no one else is watching. Nonna Lucia." Nia looked up, tears blurring her vision. Dante's eyes were on her, not cold, not commanding, but filled with something she hadn't seen before. Regret, hope, fear. "Which one are you?" she whispered. "The destroyer, or the one who saves it?" He took a slow breath. "That depends on you." For the first time, she believed him. She tucked the letter into her coat. "Then let's finish what she started." They left the villa as the sun climbed over the horizon, light spilling across the sea like forgiveness. In that quiet moment, something shifted between them. An unspoken truce. Fragile, but real. Nia wasn't the same woman who'd served drinks in Bellissimo. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was the woman holding the truth that could end a war. And somewhere deep inside, for the first time in years, she felt strength instead of fear. Have you ever reached that moment when fear turns into purpose? When running just isn't an option anymore? If you were Nia, would you open the box and face everything that came with it? Or walk away and never know what the truth could have changed? The sea roared beneath the cliffs, wind tearing at the edges of the old villa as Nia Parker and Dante Ricci carried the iron box to the car. Salt spray and dawn mist blurred together, turning the world pale gray and gold. For a moment, it almost felt calm, until the sound of engines cut through the wind. 3 black SUVs were crawling up the dirt road toward them. Nia's pulse jumped. "They found us." Dante's jaw tightened. They were tracking me, not you. He slid a pistol from the holster beneath his coat and checked the clip. Get in the car. She shook her head. I'm not hiding. This isn't bravery, Nia. It's suicide. Maybe. But if I hand you those ledgers, I'm not handing you over alone. Their eyes met, the argument ending without words. The first SUV skidded to a stop, gravel spraying. Men stepped out, dark coats, hard eyes, rifles glinting in the morning light. At their center stood a man Nia recognized from the photograph in Dante's study. Luca Moretti, Dante murmured. My father's old lieutenant. So this was the ghost who'd been hunting them both. Luca smiled thinly. Dante Ricci, still trying to play the noble criminal. And you brought a guest. How sweet. He turned to Nia. You look just like Lucia when she thought she could outsmart me. Nia felt her stomach twist. You killed my grandmother's friends, he shrugged. Your grandmother chose the wrong side. Dante stepped forward. And you chose to finish what you started 20 years ago. Leave her out of this. Luca laughed. Can't. The girl has what I want. His gaze dropped to the box in Nia's hands. Give it to me, ragazza, and I'll make your death quick. Dante moved between them, gun raised. You'll touch her over my corpse. Gladly. The first shot rang out, echoing across the cliffs. Chaos erupted, bullets sparking off stone, glass shattering, gulls exploding into the sky. Nia dove behind the car as Dante fired back, precise and cold. 2 men fell. Another kept advancing. She clutched the box to her chest. Not again. Not another person dying because of me. Her grandmother's words flashed in her mind. Use them not for power, but for peace. Peace. Nia's eyes darted to the car's trunk. Inside, Dante's briefcase lay open. She'd seen him stash a flash drive there earlier, a duplicate of the ledgers he'd already scanned. If she could get that drive out, send it to the police, none of them would have power over it again. Heart hammering, she crawled across the gravel, fingers slick with rain and blood. Dante saw her and shouted, Nia, no! Too late. She slammed the trunk shut around the drive, slipped it into her pocket, and ran toward the cliff edge. Luca shouted, Stop her! 2 men broke off, chasing. Nia sprinted through the broken courtyard, lungs burning, the roar of the sea pulling her forward. She turned at the last moment, cornered now. Nothing but air and ocean behind her. End of the line, one of them sneered. Yeah, she whispered, gripping the iron box tight. For you. She swung it like a hammer. The impact cracked bone. He dropped. She turned on the second, kicked his knee sideways the way her grandmother's old self-defense classes had taught her. He fell, groaning, and she ran again, back toward the villa. Inside, Dante and Luca circled each other, guns drawn. Luca's voice dripped venom. You're just like him, Dante, too proud to admit you're one of us. I'm not him, Dante growled. He built an empire on blood. I'm ending it. By letting a waitress decide who lives and dies? Dante's expression hardened. By letting truth decide. He squeezed the trigger. Luca fired at the same moment. The sound merged into one deafening crack. Nia screamed. Both men staggered. Luca's bullet grazed Dante's shoulder. Dante's found its mark. Luca collapsed against the marble column, eyes wide, a red bloom spreading across his chest. He laughed once, wet, bitter. You think killing me ends it? The others will come. Dante stepped closer, breathing hard. Then I'll be ready. Luca's eyes shifted to Nia, standing behind him now, rain dripping from her hair. He'll never change, he rasped. Men like him don't know how. Then his head slumped forward. Silence filled the villa. Only the sea kept speaking. Nia rushed to Dante, pressing her hands to his wound. You're bleeding. It's nothing. Nothing? You got shot. He caught her wrist gently. I've been through worse. She looked at him, eyes bright with anger and relief all at once. You can stop pretending you don't care, Dante. You came after me. You saved me. He met her gaze. And you saved me back. For a long moment, neither moved. Then she pulled the flash drive from her pocket and held it up. This is what everyone's killing for. If we destroy it, it's over. He hesitated. And the ledgers? She lifted the box. They go with it. Dante's jaw worked, torn between legacy and redemption. You'd burn everything my father built. She stepped closer. Maybe that's the only way either of us walks free. Rain hissed against the floor as they stood by the fireplace. Together they dropped the flash drive and the ledgers into the flames. The silk caught first, then the pages, curling into black ash. Dante watched until the last ember died, shoulders sagging. Nia whispered, "It's done." He turned to her, voice rough. "Nothing's ever really done. But maybe now, it can begin again." Outside, the first thin light of dawn touched the horizon, turning the sea silver. For the first time since she'd met him, Dante smiled. A small, real thing that reached his eyes. Nia felt something inside her unclench. "What happens now?" "We start over," he said, "on honest ground." She laughed softly. "Honest? You don't even know what that means." "Then teach me." He reached for her hand. Slow, careful, almost shy. She didn't pull away. You ever stand in the wreckage of everything you thought you wanted and realize maybe that's where the truth finally fits? If you were Nia, would you have burned it all? The lies, the legacy, the danger, to start again with the one person who might still change? This brings the emotional closure, forgiveness, redemption, and a new beginning for both Nia and Dante. The rhythm is written for a calm, spoken read-through. Soft, cinematic, and deeply emotional. Part 9. Resolution. The fire burned low, glowing orange in the gray dawn. For the first time in what felt like forever, Nia Parker and Dante Ricci stood in silence that wasn't heavy. It was clean. Ash drifted through the air like snow. The ledgers, the proof, the poison, were gone. Nia sank onto the cold stone floor, her hands still shaking. "It's really over." Dante lowered himself beside her, pressing a torn sleeve against the wound on his shoulder. "It's never completely over," he said quietly. "But it's over for tonight." She gave a tired laugh. "That's the most optimistic thing I've ever heard you say." He smiled faintly. "Maybe I'm learning." The wind pushed through the broken windows, carrying the smell of rain and sea. For the first time since she'd stepped into his world, Nia felt the air move through her lungs without fear attached to it. By the next morning, the villa had been cleared. Luca's men had scattered or surrendered. The authorities, tipped anonymously, arrived to collect what was left of the wreckage. Dante spoke to them briefly, voice calm, answers short. When they drove away, he turned toward her. "Your grandmother's safe," he said. "She's been moved to a hospital under protection. You can see her now." Nia stared at him, stunned. "You did that?" He shrugged. "You'd never forgive me if I didn't." The ride to Florence felt like waking from a dream. Blue skies returning, the hills warm with sunlight. Dante drove with one hand on the wheel, the other loosely bandaged. She studied him in the quiet. "You could leave all this now, couldn't you?" "I could," he said. "But you can't erase a name like mine overnight. I'll have to rebuild it the right way." She smiled softly. "Restaurants, not rackets." He chuckled. "Something like that. Maybe start with better shift schedules and higher pay." His grin grew. "Noted." At the hospital, Nia hesitated outside Lucia's room. The rhythmic beep of the monitors mixed with the faint smell of antiseptic and lilies. Her grandmother looked smaller now, but her eyes, still bright green, lit up the moment Nia stepped through the door. "Mia cara," Lucia whispered. Nia rushed forward, taking her hand. "You scared me half to death." Lucia smiled faintly. "You sound just like your mother." For a long time, they simply held each other. No secrets, no lies. Then Lucia's gaze moved to the man standing in the doorway. "Dante Ricci." He inclined his head respectfully. "Signora, I never thought I'd see another Ricci in my lifetime." "Nor I another Rossi," he said gently. "Your ledger's gone. With it, the power they hunted you for." Lucia's eyes softened. "Good. Let them chase ghosts now." Nia looked between them. "You both lost too much to this war. No more." Her grandmother squeezed her hand. "Then promise me, Nia. Live freely. No more running from fear or love." Nia blinked back tears. "I promise." Lucia nodded once, satisfied, and closed her eyes to rest. Outside, sunlight poured through the tall windows of the corridor. Nia leaned against the wall, wiping her eyes. Dante stood beside her, quiet, respectful. She's right, he said finally. You don't have to keep running. She looked at him. Neither do you. He gave a small laugh. You really think I can be redeemed? I think you already started. He met her gaze, something unspoken passing between them. I don't deserve you, Nia. Probably not, she said, smiling through tears. But maybe we both deserve a clean slate. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small brass key. To the villa near Naples. It's yours if you want it. No strings. She looked at it, then at him. You mean that? I do. It's time something good came from all this. She took the key, fingers brushing his. Maybe I'll open a cafe. Nonna Lucia's in her honor. He grinned. Best coffee in Italy. Only if you behave yourself enough to earn a free cup. A few days later, the world started spinning forward again. The news reported the fall of an old crime syndicate, anonymous tips leading to arrests, assets seized, debts cleared. Nia stayed in Italy longer than she'd planned. She visited the vineyards that had once been guarded like fortresses. Now they were quiet, peaceful, vines heavy with fruit. Dante met her there one afternoon. No bodyguards, no black cars. Just a man in rolled-up sleeves carrying 2 cups of espresso. Still tastes like victory? She teased. He handed her a cup. More like second chances. They stood overlooking the fields, the breeze lifting her curls. You ever wonder, Nia said softly, if people like us can really start over? He looked at her, eyes warm and tired all at once. Starting over isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing different next time. She sipped the coffee, thinking of all they'd burned to get here. Then maybe we're already halfway there. He reached for her hand, fingers intertwining with hers, and for once she didn't pull away. The horizon shimmered gold. The vineyards stretched toward forever. For the first time, there was no chase, no fear, just quiet. Sometimes the end of one story is just the start of peace you never thought you'd earn. If you were standing there beside Nia, would you stay to build a new life on ashes? Or fly home and leave the past buried in Italy? Months later, a small sign appeared above a seaside cafe in Florence. Lucia's table, coffee, pastries, second chances. Inside, laughter mingled with jazz. Tourists ordered cappuccinos, unaware that the woman behind the counter once walked through fire to get here. Every morning, a tall man in a white shirt came by before the rush, always leaving a single white tulip on the counter. Nia would smile, set his espresso down and whisper, Grazie, signore. He would answer, as he always did, for reminding me what peace tastes like. And sometimes when the sun hit the water just right, she'd look out at the horizon and whisper, almost to herself, we made it. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.